definitely talk about funding, but I would like to jump again to Sahar, and in this case, focus again on Saudi because over the last couple of years, as we could see, this is also the women empowerment movement here has been also really noticeable. And I can say that last year, for example, I was hosting the health tech stage here, and I've seen so many amazing women leading the tech at that time, like health, like let's say in health tech. But as I can see and I can observe in media companies, so many bright women at our stage, and I'm so excited actually to see that. When we're talking about specifically women for impact, can you please also share with us the personal stories, how you actually grew the women representation and leading role positions in the Middle East?
Well, I think there's something important that Mariam just touched on, which is representation. And to build on that, I've heard about a term called female leadership archetype versus the male leadership archetype. And so the female leadership archetype is generally, most females are more empathetic, they're more, they just lead in a different way, let's say. And so we don't see that a lot in boardrooms and executive leadership, and it's not something that everyone is or has the confidence and courage to pursue that kind of leadership. And so making that the norm, normalizing the female leadership archetype, I think is super helpful for us. On a personal level, I think many years ago, I was a project manager and I was trying to be aggressive and trying to act like how the men act, and it didn't work for me because it wasn't authentic, it wasn't real. So now I think I want to be authentic and I want to bring my whole self to work, and that helps me a lot. And I really hope that the new generation will also be able to do that, because we can talk about how to raise our confidence, we can talk about many things, but at the core of it, this is not our nature. And to normalize that is super important. So I hope I've answered your question. Maybe I've deviated away, but I think this is the core of the issue.
Thank you, Sahar. Helen, I would like to jump to you because you actually said also a bright example how the number of women working in a leading position in Ireland grew from 7% to 37. Can you please tell us how you see how, let's say, the landscape in media industry, in AI, specifically in tech, is changing with women on top, with women are leaders?
I think it comes back to what Miriam has just said. Is to be our authentic selves, and there is a market out there for women within AI and within, you see content creators, you see media, and having that female authentic voice at the table is really important. So we are seeing more of that, and I think again it comes back to mentorship, support, people that are further along in their careers, mentoring others, supporting others, giving advice, and by doing that, I think we're seeing more females at the table.
And if I can add to that, I mean, particularly in terms of AI, I think everyone's heard of ChatGPT and these large language models that are coming out now, and they're definitely hitting, I think, a world by storm. But one of the big things that we focus on, at least at Meta, and that's something I can speak to, is the importance of having a diverse team, because all of these models, as we probably know, are based on data, and a lot of the time, the data scientists that are creating these models tend to be men, which means that whether they know it or not, there's certain implicit bias that's being put into the models, and that's not just from a male perspective. That's just generally, like if it's someone from just the UAE making the model, then the culturally bias perhaps. And I think for us, one big aspect is focusing on ensuring that the team that's developing any of the models that come out it's diverse, and you have people from all a number of countries. You have people of different genders, and that ensures that there's almost like a testing of what data is going in, and then and kind of ensurement that then that model is not biased. And there's one of the tools that we have that's called kind of fairness flow.
Fairness flow?
Fairness flow. It's a cheesy name, I admit. But basically, you can put your model into this tool, and it tests whether your model is biased or not. Again,
How unbiased this
like how unbiased the model is. That was very biased. I mean, I'm now telling you this, so I'm obviously being biased in myself. But the idea is that this tests whether your model is, for example, if your model is meant to generate images of scientists, if it's only generating male scientists,
by the way,
that in itself is biased. Yes.
Yesterday we had like really bright examples how when you would generate an AI image of a scientist, because it was based on a lot of male scientists, there was no picture. So AI would analyze like millions of pictures from the internet, and all of them are men. So eventually, it didn't even provide any picture of a female scientist. So eventually, it kind of didn't provide the overall picture. So what do you think in this case, how AI can be unbiased, how we can teach AI, first of all, to be unbiased when we're talking about this kind of very simple example?
I think it goes back to, again, the development of the model. If you start the cycle already having this in mind, if you already are aware that you as human are going to have natural biases, so you have a diverse team to keep everybody in check and to hold people accountable, then you hope that you create the least biased model that you can. But again, it's not possible to have a completely unbiased model. But that's why you then have what we call red teaming, which is kind of hacking the model, so people then recheck the model. You have, especially if you have an open source model where a number of people are using it and have access to it, they then check the model. So by having a much larger community kind of be a part of the development process, you lead hopefully to a much more diverse model and a less biased model.
By the way, you actually touched today a really important topic when we're talking about funding, startup funding. And when we're talking about specifically, in this case, AI startups, the one that are led by women, what are the main obstacles you see to funding for women-led AI startups? And what initiatives have been successful that you can play as a personal examples in bridging those gaps?
Okay, so I can go. Just to build on what Mariam was saying, I also searched for investor AI images, and all were men, none were women. So that just maybe answers part of your question. Investor, yes.
Amazing. Okay.
So
who was building that AI?
Well, I'm not going to mention the name of the company, but yeah, I mean that gives you the general idea.
Okay.
In terms of funding, we know that 3% of funding only goes for female-led tech startups. So that's a very low number. In the Middle East, it's actually better. In the GCC, it's actually better. So we're seeing a lot of improvements, specifically in the GCC region. But globally, I think there's also what you mentioned, like, for example, we don't have many female investors. We need to democratize access to female angel investors, because right now we see the majority are males, if we're going to be honest, right? So having that, and also what we've done, for example, in terms of the female entrepreneurs, is that we match them with mentors. But the mentors are very patient. And so usually startup programs are very rigorous, very demanding, and very aggressive. But what we do is we're more patient. And so one of our startup founders, for example, she had a sister who was going through stage 4 cancer. And so we were very patient with her, rather than, you have to do this. Because we know that we're caregivers. We know that we have a lot of responsibilities. And the system is not going to be fair for everyone if we don't give that kind of patience for our female startup founders.
So how